How's it going, you guys? So in this video I wanted to give a complete overview of Mark Hyman, some of the books that he's released, and how his opinions and beliefs have changed over the years. So for those of you who don't already know, Dr. Mark Hyman is a medical doctor. He's actually a functional medicine doctor who is trained in traditional medicine as well as functional medicine, and he founded the Cleveland Clinic, which is a prestigious clinic that specializes in treating all sorts of diseases. There's lots of research that is done exclusively out of the Cleveland Clinic. In fact, I believe Dr. Esselstyn, maybe it's Dr. Esselstyn, I believe, his research on reversing heart disease, I believe, was actually done at the Cleveland Clinic. Could be wrong though, but very prestigious medical center. And for those of you who don't know, functional medicine is simply combining modern medicine, like pharmaceutical drugs and surgeries and diagnostic tests, and all of the best aspects of pharmaceutical medicine and mainstream medicine, and it's combining it with herbs, supplements, and nutrition science, and all of the best of all forms of medicine. Okay, it's pretty much the same. It's pretty much similar to integrative medicine, which is what Dr. Will is known for. But functional medicine is all about solving the root cause, and it's really focused on giving the body what it needs, essentially. So, for example, let's just get right into it, and you guys will understand what I'm talking about here. So, the first book so Mark Hyman is one of the very first health gurus I ever got into. Back when I actually used to follow health gurus, before I learned how to interpret research and before I started to actually understand physiology and nutrition and how it all works independently. And Mark Hyman has the majority of the science down at this current moment. So the first book that I picked up was the Ultramind Solution. It was being shared as like the be-all, end-all of nutrition for proper mental health at the time, and the different groups that I was a part of when I first started. And keep in mind, this was back in like 2013 that I first got introduced into the Ultramind Solution. And I started to really try putting his methods to use in 2014. And this was actually the very first step that I took that actually got me closer to feeling great to where I am now. But where I am now is light years away from where I was back then. And essentially, the Ultramind Solution is a great start for understanding the mechanisms behind how nutrition can cause and treat mental health disorders. Things that the Ultramind Solution talks about. It starts off with a big section explaining why pharmaceutical medicine is not the answer, explaining how there's an entire body of literature, a gigantic body of science that is ignored by conventional medicine doctors, and science is way ahead of doctors, medical doctors, as far as treating mental disorders and what causes mental disorders. And the entire book is about how to solve mental disorders and optimize your brain and your body on all levels. And it's based on not only can you do blood markers, it talks about the specific blood markers you want to get tested from your doctor. Mark Hyman also actually released a free companion guide that you can actually look up, and I highly recommend you check it out. It's essentially the entire protocol for free from on a PDF format. It's called Ultramind Solution Companion Guide. Just search that up. It's free on his website. And basically, what the entire book is about is neurotransmitters, the different nutrients in different foods to actually form to create these neurotransmitters. It discusses how, for example, dopamine is, in order for dopamine to be produced, you need to eat L-tyrosine or L-phenylalanine from protein foods, from beans, from chicken, etc. And when you eat these protein foods, it contains phenylalanine and it contains tyrosine, which are amino acids that you could buy in supplement form if you really have severe depression or motivation issues. But they're found in these foods, and they're the first step to giving your body the building blocks to create dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter that regulates motivation and chasing different goals, short-term gratification versus long-term goal-seeking, things like that. And in addition to these amino acids you get from protein foods or supplements, tyrosine, phenylalanine, your body also needs cofactors like vitamin C, magnesium, and B vitamins. And all of this is discussed in this book. It's a really good introduction to learning, essentially the real cause of mental illness as far as, physical causes. Somebody who actually does have a neurotransmitter problem, like low serotonin, low dopamine, etc. That's what this book is all about. Okay, it is the real science behind neurochemical imbalance. It's not the just disgusting crap that pharmaceutical psychology is all about, where they just prescribe you prescription meth for ADHD, or these drugs that they don't even know what these drugs do, the mechanism of action. They only have theories on how they work. Speaking of which, I was actually on Seroquel about 2,000 milligrams from the time I was about 9 years old until I was 21. And anyone who knows anything about that medication knows that's horrible. I felt like a zombie. I had withdrawals for like 2 to 4 years. It's horrible. And this book saved me. So it has tests that you can actually get in the free companion guide that they're like quizzes for each neurotransmitter. Like if you're deficient in GABA, if you're deficient in methyl donors like folate and B12 and different B vitamins and methylators and different nutrients that your body needs to produce neurotransmitters and for your enzymes to work properly in these things. It has a quiz on digestion, a quiz on omega-3 deficiency, which I think is outdated. This book came out a long time ago, I think in like 2007, maybe 2010. But it's still relevant to this day. If you don't have the money to spend on blood tests and things like that, these quizzes are pretty comprehensive. It has information on vitamin D. In fact, it has a vitamin D quiz. It has quizzes on hormones, adrenal function, or energy function, chronic fatigue, thyroid hormone, testosterone, estrogen levels, and just asking simple questions. And you put down however many questions you answered yes to, and it gives you a score. And based on the score, he gives you basically a prescription of some kind. That could he gives you a diet plan to follow, and the basic diet plan covers all your bases, your omega-3s, your monounsaturated fats, and removing all of the things that generally cause problems. Typically inflammatory foods, the very basic things we know are bad for us, like sugar and hydrogenated oils and omega-6 oils. Highly recommend this book. One thing to point out is that the Ultramind Solution was one of his early works. Back then, the science on saturated fats wasn't as strong as it is now. Like, we don't have as much contradictory evidence towards the cholesterol hypothesis as we do now. At the time, medical doctors like Mark Hyman weren't thinking correlation doesn't equal causation, etc. So essentially he recommends a Mediterranean-style diet, high in omega-3 fish oils from fatty fish, high in he recommends egg yolks, but to limit saturated fat, because at this time he thought that saturated fat was bad for you. But he does recommend high amounts of fish and lean animal proteins, but to stay away from like red meat and butter and stuff like that. and at the time, beans and legumes and stuff like that, which is sound advice as long as you don't suffer from an autoimmune disorder or something like that, for the most part. Anyway, this was one of his earlier works, and his opinions on saturated fat and all of these things have changed a lot since then, because at that time, you guys got to remember, the paleo movement wasn't big. There wasn't a lot of awareness on Crohn's disease and digestive disorders. The information on lectins and just celiac disease and inflammatory intestinal disorders at the time was very, people didn't even know much about that back then. So another book he released around that same time is called Ultra Prevention. Essentially, it's an outdated program to prevent and reverse chronic disease. And the thing about his ideas back then with Ultra Prevention, the Ultramind solution, is that it will prevent heart disease, because it's high in all. It recommends all the things that raise your HDL, they lower your LDL, whether that's a problem or not. Raises your HDL, lowers your LDL, and it lowers triglycerides. Okay, I can tell you that for sure. If you eat that way, you might be bloated, might have digestive problems. It'll give you plenty of variety. You won't have to go keto or something, but it will improve your health unless you have digestive problems from all the beans and things he recommends. But at the time, he claimed animal fats were bad. It's based on Mediterranean-style eating, olive oil, avocados, nuts and seeds. He likes nuts. He was big on, he likes nuts, guys. He was big on polyphenols and antioxidants and stuff like that. And the thing is, he had clinical experience. He was a part of one of the biggest and most prestigious hospitals in the world, the medical, or the Cleveland Clinic. He knows what works with heart disease and diabetes and these things. Low glycemic load carbohydrates. At the time, it was more about glycemic index back then, so there were a lot more grains and stuff, but whole grains. It was olive oil. It was all the things that I think really will promote health personally. Well, not necessarily. I don't think you need to be eating grains and beans and shit like that, but I do believe monounsaturated fats, whether that's from pork, pork fat, it will raise your HDL. It's high in monounsaturated, the type of monounsaturated fats that improve your vascular function, the type of monounsaturated fats that Okinawans were eating for so long, and the people of Crete. But it may not apply to people with intestinal problems or autoimmune disease, and this information doesn't apply to low-carb dieters. At the time, they didn't have a big keto crowd. This is back in the day before people even knew what ketogenic diets were, or what nutritional ketosis was. This was at that time where low-carb diets weren't even known about. There wasn't even much talk about it, other than paleo. Paleo was just starting out back then. That's why he was against animal fats. That's why, but his diet is still good. It's just that his information at the time about saturated fats wasn't, it's not the same information that he has now, and he changed his beliefs. So that brings me to more recent books. I believe this book came out in 2016. It's called Eat Fat, Get Thin. Okay. Now, this book, when I first saw it, I thought was cool, but it does sound really gimmicky, and I think Mark Hyman has gotten to a point where he's trying to please everyone. I don't know. But he looks healthy. He sounds healthy in his talks and debates and whatnot. He had a debate with vegans. Hey baby, I'm making a video.
Oh, I was going to tell you an update on that guy.
Okay, let me finish my video.
Oh, well, okay, I guess.
Alright. So we had debates. He's really healthy. Eat Fat, Get Thin essentially is Mark Hyman's updated opinions on making on animal fats and his style of evidence-based low-carb nutrition. So Eat Fat, Get Thin is almost a ketogenic diet. I think in some of his meal plans, he allows like half a sweet potato, squash, stuff like that. That is super low glycemic load, super nutrient dense, and a lot of keto people actually eat sweet potatoes, believe it or not. But you have to eat a very small amount. It's not supposed to be a ketogenic diet as far as I know. Like, I've read through this book, but I haven't actually obtained it. But it talks about how he was wrong about animal fats, and that there's no causal evidence. The evidence linking saturated fats to heart disease is weak now. And he realizes that he was fooled by the LDL claims. And he also mentions in the book, I believe, that you can actually lower LDL on a low-carb, high-fat diet, depending on the composition of your fats. And so that's a good book to get, combined with the Ultramind solution. So if you get the Ultramind solution, you can get all of his information on nutritional cofactors and different nutrients that work to boost your neurotransmitters in your brain and promote mental health. And you can use the tests and things in that book and the supplement guide and information to help you supplement things you might need, right? To figure out what's wrong with you, which is a really good resource even if the nutrition data is outdated. And then for your eating plan, you can go with Eat Fat, Get Thin. If you want to do a high-fat, low-carb diet that's based on evidence, that's actually got meal plans and recipes and things that are written by one of the best medical doctors in the world. Now that he's updated his beliefs according to the new evidence that's came out over time. So I do recommend Eat Fat, Get Thin. I recommend the Ultramind solution, and just to see how someone's thoughts can change over time. Getting ultra prevention later on is probably cool, just to see what he thought at the time, just to see maybe for shits and giggles, but more so to see the different paradigms of medicine back then, because it's been over 10 years, I believe, since ultra prevention came out until Eat Fat, Get Thin. That's a long time for science, and that's one thing I love about Mark Hyman, is that he's all about the science, and his opinions change over time. That's always good. Conversely, I have people like Dr. Andrew Weil, who has been becoming more and more of a vegetarian over time. But Andrew Weil's doing good. He's an old motherfucker, and he's still rocking. So it's too bad so many people forgot about Andrew Weil. He was one of the first gurus I got into as well, until I realized that I can't be eating grains. They don't work for me. So that brings me to food. What the heck should I eat? So this book, Food, What the Heck Should I Eat, is another great book. As a matter of fact, Food, What the Heck Should I Eat is great for the skeptical folks that don't believe the grain industry, they don't believe the meat industry, because this talks about the pros and cons of every single food. And if I remember correctly, it talks about the science that says dairy is bad for you, and then the science that says saturated fat itself might not be bad for you. It talks about beans, talking about how they're low glycemic load, they're high in nutrients, but they also can possibly cause digestive problems for many people, and they might have anti-nutrients in them that might actually hinder absorption of the minerals that are in the beans. And so it's a very fascinating read, and even more fascinating if you read the reviews on this book. You'll see a bunch of people that are confused, and they're saying things like contradictory advice. On one page he says to avoid dairy, the next he says it's okay to eat butter. Same thing with beans. On one page it says that beans are good for you and full of nutrients, and it's nature's multivitamin. On the other one it says that beans might cause Crohn's disease or something. And so that's actually why this book is so good. It's because it's not another vegan propaganda book. It's not another paleo propaganda book. So, people who only want information that is in alignment with your own current beliefs, that's not good. That's how you stay stuck and you never make progress anywhere. This is exactly the reason why I've spoken so much about veganism maybe not being so good for health. It's not because I'm against veganism or the plant-based diet. It's mostly because people who get involved in keto or paleo or vegan or breatharianism, they are so heavily invested in that label that they can't even entertain the possibility that there might be something out there that is equally as good or maybe even better, because the fact is we do know that there are people that have a genetic predisposition to hyper responders to saturated fat, and I've seen testimonials from overweight people, obese people that are trying to lose weight on a keto diet, and within the in the short term, within the first couple weeks of them they were losing lots of weight on a keto diet, but for whatever reason they had a heart attack or something. I've seen case reports in the keto community because of that. Does that mean that keto causes heart attacks? Not necessarily. Does that mean saturated fat is bad for everyone? Not necessarily. The same thing goes for vegan diets. I think that a lot of people have a very blind approach, thinking that vegan diets are great for everyone. And I do think that vegan diets put you at a severe disadvantage health-wise. But there are people that have died from heart disease on a vegan diet as well as a keto diet. And all I'm saying here is there's a right and a wrong way to do things. And the most important thing for you to do is research all aspects of health. You guys want to know how the fuck I've gotten to the point that I am? Definitely not by just, carnivore is the way or something like some people out there. I'm not going to name names. I've researched all aspects of this, and that's why I'm able to debunk people like Vegan Gains. That's why I'm able to, be both with and against certain principles of different diets, like veganism and things. And so, anyway, that is actually what that book is all about. Food, what the heck should I eat? I think that's a great read for someone who wants the truth about food, is that, look, you're going to have to experiment, you know what I mean? It is a confusing thing. That's why it's so hard to heal without a doctor, is because, if you're trying to figure out what's causing your illness, you've got to go through trial and error. But it's very hard to go through trial and error and figure things out without wasting years and years, unless you actually research people's experiences, first of all. Someone like Mark Hyman or another medical doctor, they have first-hand experience using nutrition as food, and so they can see that their patients develop different autoimmune illness in response to different diets. And some people, so that clinical experience helps you when you pay attention to it. And it's similar to people's anecdotes. If you see thousands of anecdotes on Reddit that all say the same thing, then you know that there's a correlation there that you should pay attention to, like beans causing problems for many people. And so, of course, maybe there's different reasons why you have those problems. Just because everyone has trouble digesting beans doesn't mean that beans are bad for digestion. It could be that you need certain gut flora to digest it. It could be maybe that your genetics just, you're predisposed to digestive problems from different foods, but probably not. There's many reasons why, and that's the only reason why anecdotes aren't so great, is because all these people say, when I eat nothing but meat, all my health problems go away. But you have to ask, are vegetables actually the problem? Or is it the environment of your intestines, stuff like that? That's why people talk down on anecdotes. I understand that. But at the same time, you cannot go against the clinical experience of someone like Mark Hyman or the anecdotes of thousands and thousands of people. So anyway, that book will help you guys kind of on your journey towards what's going on with my health. It'll help guide you in that way. It's not like a you should eat this or you shouldn't eat this type of thing. It's like, hey, this food causes these problems for different people, but it also has these health benefits, you know. And weighing the pros and cons and seeing if you can tolerate certain foods like beans that have all these vitamins in them. So anyway, yeah, Mark Hyman's great. You know, I recommend, you know, definitely read Food, What the Heck Should I Eat? You know, if you need like a quick idea on different foods, and it basically summarizes all of his opinions on different foods over the years. Eat Fat, Get Thin is a good like low carb diet that's based in functional medicine, and it still allows you a little bit of carbs here and there. It's a good program to follow if you're just looking for health and weight loss. Ultra Prevention is a traditional medical diet based on eating healthy fats, low glycemic carbs, and nutrient-dense foods. And then Ultramind Solution is all about how food impacts your brain. So I love Mark Hyman. I do think that some like he is a little like he seems like he flip-flopped a little bit too much. He has this idea of paleo vegan. He calls it pagan diet or pagan diet, and paganism is like a religion, so it's kind of not a good idea to call it that. But I feel like, yeah, maybe combining paleo and vegan principles is probably a good way to avoid dogmatic tribalism, I guess. You know, make everyone happy, kind of like Lane Norton trying to say, oh, all diets work as long as you restrict calories or something. Anyway, leave your questions and comments down below. Mark Hyman is your friend. Okay, he's not against animal fats, and I'll talk to you on the next video.